So the plan is to machine a minute hand for a Miota movement. And I use a diagram like this to work out the angles and dimensions that I need. I'm using 0.2mm thick spring steel, which I have on an aluminium glue chuck mounted to a rotary table, which itself is centered perfectly under the spindle. Well, ideally perfectly. I need a 1mm hole, and here is represented a 0.5mm wall thickness to the hand. This is a little small and I have had some trouble with it, but I'm trying to make the whole thing as small as possible. Here the thickness is about 0.8mm, as I will be using a 3mm milling cutter to shape the outside of the form. I then draw a circle that is 1.5mm larger than the outside of the wall, and I can draw successive 3mm diameter circles on this line until they reach a point where they line up with the thickness of hand that I want to not machine away. I do this on both sides so that I have two angles to compare, as I'm looking for working out where this point is, and so use this angle and then again this angle, and I found them to be 50 degrees for this hand. After spotting and drilling the hole, I move the blank off to the side so the milling cutter is now centered out here representing the milling cutter. I then rotate the part anti-clockwise 130 degrees until we get around here. I drop the milling cutter down and machine whilst rotating back clockwise until I've come around to the same point on the other side. Then withdrawing the milling cutter, bring this back to horizontal, and I can use this diagram to work out how far I want to move the part under the spindle to get this distance and offset this distance. And so the milling cutter effectively ends up here. I can then set my 0 on the dial, move the cutter back, and I machine 0.25mm depth of cut each time to come back up to this line, finishing with the milling cutter centered here. Then here I have this dimension to move the cutter to the back, drop it down, and again I'm machining away 0.25mm at a time until I reach this point, this line here, all the while as I'm machining away more of the blank which is glued down, hoping that there is sufficient material to hold the part in place before I've finished shaping it. So spot drill, offset the part, rotate the part, slowly feeding it in until I'm just cutting into the aluminium base. Then I can rotate the part and see I'm using air. Usually I would use oil, but then you wouldn't be able to see anything. In some ways I think I prefer using the air for getting rid of all the chips. Here we go, rotating the part all the way around, so that should leave thickness very close to the finished thickness of the hand that I'm looking for. These cuts are 0.25mm. I'm cutting in both directions, just going very slowly. Probably cutting a little deeper than perhaps I need to, and I would prefer the blank to be a little bit longer so that there's more of the blank left at the end of the cut, just helping hold it down as I machine away. The blank, which is all held down with glue to this aluminium base. Again, 0.25mm cuts on the back. I don't know why the tool jumped up and down there. Possibly just checking that I'm close enough to the hole to not machine through the wall thickness. And here is the hand that resulted. I have started hand finishing it. Then I was not able to get in for a while to the workshop. Came in, cleaned off all of the glue that I had been using to hold the part to hand finish it, and I spotted this. Not easy to see here. I'll get closer. And so here we see the problem. 1mm hole, wall thickness around 0.5mm. But here there's a terrible gouge taken out of it. You can see how crude we still are under significant magnification. I didn't in any way complete the hand finishing of the shaping of the part, let alone the polishing. But once I saw this, I decided there was little point in continuing with such a stunningly small wall thickness there. So I reviewed the footage to see if I could work out from that why I hadn't noticed happen as I was actually doing it. So I started at the beginning, and here's the blank. And there is what looks like a bit of a dot there. And here I come in, centre drilling. Just below that dot. I was confident things were good here. Because it looked like after the spot drilling, that's all you've got, but I think you can see the spot there. Here's it cleaned off after drilling. That's the hole we've seen under the microscope. I suspect that either that is the dot that was visible on the blank, or somehow, in fact, the drilling has caught in a bit of that. And certainly the problem is there at this point, and so nothing that came after it has caused it. I've made a bunch of hands with basically this technique and not found this problem. And the mark on the blank that is clearly visible has to be, for me, the most likely cause of the problem. Before I noticed this, I've considered very many other possibilities. This still stands aloft as the most likely for me, and going forward I will focus upon that, whilst remembering that I'm not perfectly sure exactly what caused this trouble. As I said, I not been able to get into the workshop in a little bit, and I am inclined towards an adventure that will be highly satisfying. So I'm going to aim very high and perhaps put these hands, our hand that I'm trying to make, pause this for a bit, focus on getting some glorious achievements and adventures under my belt in a short time. Thank you for watching.